What a super brand means to a consumer, and that's really the important thing, is it's a brand that's reliable, it's trustworthy, it delivers against its promises, and really it does add either tangible or emotional advantages over its competitors. So it's a cut above the rest, effectively, within its sector.
And how do you achieve Superbrand status?
It's a very long, hard road. If you look at most of the super brands in the new publication that we've just launched, most of them have been around for decades and decades. It takes a lot of time, a lot of investment. It takes a lot of consumer insight. You've really got to understand what the consumer wants and deliver against it. And of course, everything within the marketing mix has to work well, whether it's your advertising, whether it's your PR. Every area that you touch upon a consumer has to be exceptional and has to impress that consumer to give you the status of being a super brand. When it comes to branding, we like to turn to brands that are reliable, trustworthy. We've grown up with all our lives, and we know will deliver against their promises, and we know, they will be around for many years to come. They're not a flash in the pan, and they won't go bust. And that's why these brands are dominating the survey this year.
Joining us is branding expert Stephen Kaliotis. Stephen, thanks for joining us on Sky News this afternoon. It's obviously titillating, reading the news of the world yesterday and then continuing with the tabloids today. What's your take on it?
Certainly started, as you mentioned, and I think there'll be no quiet moments for the Beckham household for a while, but I think what this has shown is really the value of the Beckham brand, if you like, the actual publicity that surrounds David Beckham. And I think in terms of, is he still a bankable star after this crisis? Yes, he is, certainly.
What kind of associations were spurred with watch sport? What sort of brand?
Well, we saw with the marathon that Duracell won that, and that's not surprising with the, obviously the Duracell bunnies and the adverts last longer. Caterpillar footwear and Timberland footwear, obviously hard-wearing, enduring, they've got stamina, so that they also did well in the marathon. Branding is essential. They've got to get it right. They've got to get some good advertising right there, and they've got to establish within consumers' mind what their brand stands for and what they offer.
But you can see the logic of it, though. They were trying to say that they were not just a British company, that they were an international player.
I think you can say you're an international player, but your heritage is from Britain. And certainly if you look within the UK, the likes of Bradford and Bingley, Halifax, they're no longer based from just Yorkshire, but they still play on their Yorkshire heritage. So I think the likes of British Airways and Virgin Atlantic should play on their British roots, but nevertheless show that they have international appeal and international strength.
OK, Stephen Kaliotis from Superbrands, thanks for joining us here.
The ultimate cool list, although some may say lists aren't very cool. It's been put together by finding out what city dwellers aged between 18 and 44 think are the coolest people, places and things. And according to this list, Hollywood heartthrobs Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp, well, they're the kings of cool. They top the list for cool celebrities. If you want to get ahead in business, Sir Richard Branson is the man to look to. He's judged to be the coolest business person. Of course, we were saying earlier he's offering those tickets into space in a few years' time. And Streets should be playing on your iPod, apparently, as the coolest music artist. Replaced Coldplay, obviously. Now, according to the poll, the trendiest people wear diesel clothes, drink Stella Artois, not diesel, visit the London Eye, not while drinking Stella Artois, of course, it's not allowed in the London Eye at the moment, and drive an Audi, that Vorsprung durch Technik. And the survey also tried to find out who's actually uncool, with, surprise, surprise, Jordan and Victoria Beckham top of the pile, or should be that piles. What makes them uncool, though?
I think the problem with those type of characters, the Jordans, the Peter Andres, is that they're easily replaceable, they're easily forgettable. They don't really challenge us, they don't really excite us. They're okay to watch if you're at home and you've got nothing else to do, but generally they're not really drawing us into them. And to be a cool celebrity, to be someone that others aspire to, you've really got to challenge us, you've really got to do something amazing, and obviously the likes of Johnny Depp and Jude Law have done some fantastic films recently and have sort of inspired us really as individuals.
Cool Britannia might be over, but we still can't resist discussing who's cool, who's very cool, and who's positively sub-zero. If you're in business, you should be looking to people like Richard Branson or Chelsea owner Roman Abramovich to show you how it's done. You should be hanging out at the London Eye, Britain's coolest venue, listening to Joss Stone or The Streets if you really want street cred. In the cab on the way to see a film by Quentin Tarantino or Lord of the Rings director Peter Jackson, flick through a good book by J.K. Rowling or Michael Moore. And when you get to the red carpet, don't stand next to Jordan, find Johnny Depp instead. Follow these simple rules and you too could be a king of cool.
If you've an Audi sitting outside your house or even in your garage, you've been shopping at Selfridges and are now in your agent provocateur underwear, planning a weekend trip to New York as well, you are officially as cool as you can get. This from the Superbrands annual survey of what is hip to have and hip to do.
What is the significance of, for example, London being defined as the coolest city or Beckham being the coolest person?
Well, whether it's a brand, a personality or a city, what cool means is money, because 50% of people we interviewed said they would pay an extra amount, they would pay a significant premium for something they regard as being cool. Yes. So that's very important. People want to come to London because it's seen as cool and diverse. People want to buy Alexander McQueen because it's seen to be cool and leading edge. In the short term, it will have an impact, but Coca-Cola's quick reactions and obviously just the sheer size of Coca-Cola will protect it from any major downfall.
Very few celebrities have made themselves into a symbol since Prince, and that was supposed to be an anti-capitalist move.
It does work better in sport. I can't see, for example, Pink the singer or Tom Hanks the actor having a logo, and I can't see where they would apply it. But sport and fashion, there's a nice link there, and logos and fashion where that also works very well.
German cars, Irish linen, Scotch whiskey, Italian handbags. Should they now all be marked instead, made in the EU? Certainly not, say marketing gurus, not when branding means everything.
No, the label made in the EU doesn't mean anything whatsoever. You know, there's a whole, jigsaw of countries there, each with different strengths and weaknesses, and a generic made in the EU name does not give any value to those products.
When the company famous for its checkered Max floats on the stock exchange next month, Bravo will get a 1% stake, estimated to be worth £13 million.
I think she's sort of thoroughly deserved her keep, to be honest. She's transformed the business from a £200 million business to one that's over £1.1 billion worth. And, the brand itself has been revitalised and changed, and she's deserved every penny. I think the Morrison's brand has proven itself to be very strong in the Midlands and the North. And I think, it's up there with the Tesco's and Asda's. What the challenge is now is to actually roll that brand out across the nation. The key legacy for Peter Kenyon is the fact that he has created a global super brand out of Manchester United. He's expanded the brand into North America, into Asia, and they've got an estimated 53 million fans, or customers really, if you like, and that is a real phenomenal achievement. With Avon, the use of celebrities like Atomic Kitten and the Venus sisters have helped to, actually instill new life into what was possibly seen as a stuffy brand. There are a number of brands that he's associated with. Some are sort of real huge super brands such as Pepsi, Adidas, and there are some lesser known brands such as the Police sunglasses and Brill Cream. Now all these brands will of course suffer if he doesn't play, but I don't think it will actually be a disaster for them, because they're not only reliant on him as a sportsman, they're actually reliant on him as a personality, so someone that's high profile in the media, and someone that actually reflects their own personalities, their own brand values.
Still, they must have watched last night, those associated with the sponsorship, and felt pretty sick about the whole thing. I mean, it was a terrible tackle to begin with.
It was.
I mean, that made you feel sick to start with. But I mean, there is real serious money involved in this.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I mean, they will be obviously completely and utterly down today because of what's happened yesterday on the pitch there, and that's actually the reality when you get involved in sort of endorsements, celebrity endorsements, whether it's actually a sports person, a film star, a singer. There's always a danger. Maybe they go out of form, maybe they hit a crisis, or maybe they just simply get injured. Now, Wayne Rooney, his contracts are worth at the moment £3 million, so much smaller than David Beckham. They are likely to grow significantly to £10–15 million. But what will limit Rooney's ability to get contracts the size of Beckham's is that he's a risk factor and he is a hothead.
Adidas's origins are firmly in the sports shoe market, but its decision to split into different divisions is acknowledgement of the growing importance of other fashion-driven areas.
They're still innovating, and the actual design of the shoes is still very sound. So I wouldn't say that they've got particular problems internally that they've got to pinpoint. I think what they've got to do is just try to actually attack some of the market that's actually going away from trainers and performance footwear. We're all obsessed with celebrities at the moment. You've got every brand under the sun actually linking up with a celebrity endorser. You've got McDonald's and Justin Timberlake and Kylie and Agent Provocateur. So if you've got a celebrity diet and you've got these fantastic looking celebrities and they're saying, this is how I've looked, the way I look, a lot of people are going to follow that diet because they want to look like these celebrities that are held up in the limelight. So it's very important for the Atkins diet, and it's really the key to their success.
Some observers say she's taking it one plug too far.
I can't actually see that it's you know, a credible fit there. You know, I think something like Agent Provocateur and Kylie, a celebrity and a brand, both on the way up, you can actually see that that fits, whereas Madonna, is she going to go into a Gap store and buy their clothes? I don't think so. In the insurance and the financial services sector, there is a flight to quality to established names, names that are historical, names such as Scottish Widows, Abbey National, Legal & General, names that have been around for many years and which you know will go around for many years to come. I think Aviva, possibly, consumers may be slightly sceptical of.
Of course, if you get it wrong, it's a horribly expensive and embarrassing mistake, as the post office has found out with Consignia.
I think in Consignia's case, the criticism was somewhat harsh, because in Consignia's case, the name change is simply to do with the holding company, i.e. what the shareholders deal with and what the business actually uses to transact. The post office, the Royal Mail, they still exist. Now, in this case, whilst Norwich Union will still exist in the UK, in many other international markets, the Aviva name will be the consumer-facing name, and I think that's where there may be difficulties, because, as I say, I'm not sure consumers will trust Aviva for insurance products.
What's the point of it, really, from where they stand?
There is some very strong rationale behind that. The Norwich Union, or CGNU, actually operate under 40 different names throughout the globe, and there is, in terms of marketing budget, some rationale to actually simplify the brand architecture and just focus on the one brand name. But I think the important thing is to make sure that that brand name is the correct name, and while CGNU have done many tests with consumers, I'm not sure, certainly my initial reaction is somewhat sceptical. They may have made a missed call.
And if they don't like it, will they stick with it or change it back for a great deal more money?
I certainly don't know of any brands that have done major U-turns. I think they will stick with it, and hopefully it will work. But as I say, there is always a danger there, so we'll just have to wait and see, really. But I think we should get used to it. I think it's a great coup by McDonald's, basically. There's a lot of celebrity endorsement happening at the moment, but the key is really picking the right personality, and Justin Timberlake is a global superstar at the moment. He's riding up on the crest of a wave, and I think it's going to do McDonald's a lot of good.
With the sort of current climate of anti-US thinking, perhaps because of the war in Iraq, in some places around the world and in some camps, is that having any kind of measurable effect on the likes of Coca-Cola and Microsoft and so on?
Well, it's actually quite minimal. I mean, the Superbrands organisation recently researched marketing directors, and only 12% felt that American brands would suffer at all within the UK. And although 50% did think there would be some effect on the perception of American brands internationally, actually in sales terms it's very small, because people are quite savvy. They can differentiate between a company, a brand, and the government and the country in which that operates. The other important point is, where do brands originate from? If you take someone like Shell, that they've got listings in various stock exchanges, they operate in countries throughout the world, they have investors, community programs throughout the world. How can you pinpoint where that company and that brand comes from these days? Sure. It's very difficult. When you look at films like Castaway, where everything from the plane that is flying in to the actual boxes that get swept up onto the beach are actually branded, I think you can start to fear that advertisers are starting to encroach within our kind of movie pleasure zone, really.
But those whose job it is to work out which brands work and which don't reckon PR alone won't help raise Victoria's stock. She's got to have something to sell.
To be a cool brand, it's not just about marketing, it's not just about advertising. You've got to have a great product behind it. So she's got to produce great music, and that is the real test. Can she produce great music?
From its clothing designs to the layout of its stores, Topshop is attracting more and more customers as one of the coolest brands in the UK.
They really focus on individuality, and each store is a different persona, really. Well, what's actually happening at the moment within the British fashion industry is that the innovation is actually being led on the high street, with brands like Topshop actually pushing the boundaries and creating real new designs. And at the higher end of the market, the sort of high-end fashion brands, they're actually only owned by one or two particular organisations like Gucci and LVMH, and they're squeezing those brands to drive profits, and that's actually destroying some of that originality and creativity. The thing with celebrity and sports endorsements is that you can't just pick a sports celebrity and put him in your advert and assume that you're going to achieve success. You know, there are always dangers there. The very simplest thing can go wrong.
Being the England coach is a bit like being a mum.
Glenn Hoddle was used by Shredded Wheat because he was seen as the ultimate family man, and that's the way that he was portrayed in the advert. But of course, at the time that the adverts were breaking, he actually left his wife.
Looks like it's the most popular decision I've made all season.
Another potential problem is, of course, that the celebrity, the sports star that's endorsing the product, actually openly criticises the product or uses a rival product. He's basically done what commercial managers do and try to keep the brand going, replacing one brand with another brand with the same values, the same marketing power behind it, the same kind of gimmicks, and it's likely to work very well for him.
Morrison's as a brand, what does it say to you? Don't be afraid of using branding jargon here, because we find it amusing.
Yeah, no, Morrison's, what they've managed to do is actually install a bit of personality about them. If you go in the store, the special offers are still actually announced by Ken Morrison, a recording of his own voice, and they've also got this market street concept. So you actually go down Morrison's and it's actually segmented into the different markets. You can still go to the fishmonger, you can still go to the bakers. And whilst that is also in evidence in other supermarkets, they've really played upon that whole personal and local kind of feel about the supermarket.
OK, Safeway as a brand then?
Safeways as a brand really is a non-entity. I mean, what does it stand for? What does it actually mean? Very little, really. It's generally meant poor quality in the past.
Right. So it's not exactly trying on the brain to work out what you do when Morrison eats up Safeway. You turn the whole lot into Morrison's.
Yeah, I think that is the good idea there, but there's obviously a lot of problems because nobody in the South, at least, actually knows the Morrison brands, and so they've got a lot of work to build personality and build value outside of its core Midland and North area.
Somebody's going to make a lot of money with the marketing here because they're going to have to spend a fortune on it in the South, which after all is the biggest market, or 8-12 million people, whatever it is, live in Greater London, depending how you measure it. Now, I've never been into a Morrison's, despite my Midlands roots. I don't think they even spread that far south. So what's going to persuade me to go into a Morrison's? I might have gone into a Safeway. At least I knew where I was with that.
Well, obviously they're going to have to spend a lot of money in advertising, which they do already in their core areas I've mentioned. But also they've got to play on this whole personal image. They've got to try and differentiate themselves from the rest. It's going to be a hard job. Tesco's, Asda spend a lot of money, as do Sainsbury's, on advertising. The other thing is they've got to make sure the product's right. There's no good having a great advertising campaign if the product's poor. So they've got to revitalise the store, revitalise the staff.
Scrabble is one that most people probably wouldn't have automatically thought of, but it is a great brand. It's lasted the time, and you know, a lot of people still love Scrabble. They still play Scrabble. It's a great game.
Morrison's as a brand, what does it say to you? Don't be afraid of using branding jargon here, because we find it amusing.
Yeah, no, Morrison's, what they've managed to do is actually install a bit of personality about them. If you go in the store, the special offers are still actually announced by Ken Morrison, a recording of his own voice, and they've also got this market street concept. So you actually go down Morrison's and it's actually segmented into the different markets. You can still go to the fishmonger, you can still go to the bakers. And whilst that is also in evidence in other supermarkets, they've really played upon that whole personal and local kind of feel about the supermarket.
OK, Safeway as a brand then?
Safeways as a brand really is a non-entity. I mean, what does it stand for? What does it actually mean? Very little, really. It's generally meant poor quality in the past.
Right. So it's not exactly trying on the brain to work out what you do when Morrison eats up Safeway. You turn the whole lot into Morrison's.
Yeah, I think that is the good idea there, but there's obviously a lot of problems because nobody in the South, at least, actually knows the Morrison brands, and so they've got a lot of work to build personality and build value outside of its core Midland and North area.
Somebody's going to make a lot of money with the marketing here because they're going to have to spend a fortune on it in the South, which after all is the biggest market, or 8-12 million people, whatever it is, live in Greater London, depending how you measure it. Now, I've never been into a Morrison's, despite my Midlands roots. I don't think they even spread that far south. So what's going to persuade me to go into a Morrison's? I might have gone into a Safeway. At least I knew where I was with that.
Well, obviously they're going to have to spend a lot of money in advertising, which they do already in their core areas I've mentioned. But also they've got to play on this whole personal image. They've got to try and differentiate themselves from the rest. It's going to be a hard job. Tesco's, Asda spend a lot of money, as do Sainsbury's, on advertising. The other thing is they've got to make sure the product's right. There's no good having a great advertising campaign if the product's poor. So they've got to revitalise the store, revitalise the staff. That's where the branding issues come in.
All this personal stuff, like you said, the special offers announced by Mr. Morrison himself, is that gonna wash in London in a way it might not, in a way it might do in the north of England?
Well, there's still that question mark as to whether the people in the south have that same desire for personalisation as they do in the Midlands and the north. But I think they do. I think people are fed up of shopping in very staid, very boring, very corporate stores. So I think a personal touch might work, but as I say, they've got to turn the stores around, they've got to turn the staff around, and they've really got to get a bit of personality and buzz back into the stores to drive customers there.
Alternatively, they could just poach Jamie Oliver from Sainsbury's and let him do it for them. What does Tesco, since you're here, what does Tesco's represent as a brand then?
Tesco's campaign is every little helps, and that's really what it's about. It's about value for money, but it's also about helping you in a whole range of different areas, whether it's opening an extra aisle if you're queuing, whether it's banking or alternative products aside from the groceries.
So they try and brand it on cost and quality. They try and have it both ways.
Exactly.
But is it that dissimilar from Sainsbury's?
I think in terms of success it is, and certainly in terms of marketing, perhaps there's not so much difference between the two strategies, but certainly in terms of success. And that's really because Tesco's, the product does live up to the advertising campaign. Every little does help. If you go into a Tesco store, they will go that bit further to help you out without damaging
Mummy, you are
the
a fan of Tesco's, aren't you? I've never heard the like. So if Morrison spends enough marketing this, then you wouldn't be surprised if they made some impact in the south of the country.
Yeah, I think they can make an impact, but as I say, it's not just about ad budgets, it's also about improving the quality and reliability of the product.
Coca-Cola, Microsoft and McDonald's, what is it that they all have in common? Well, one factor is that they're all in the Business Week Global Brands Top 10, as well as having become American icons with worldwide recognition over the years. But as the United States struggles against a tide of mistrust and falling popularity in some countries around the world, how's that affecting the American corporate icons? Well, joining us now, Stephen Cheliotis is Brand Liaison Director at Superbrands. What do you think the answer is, Stephen?
Well, I think the Americans have actually dominated those league tables for some years now, and that they're very marketing savvy. And I think one of the key points is that they actually place marketing within the centre of the organisation. So they focus on marketing, they focus on brand building, and perhaps in the UK and certainly in other countries, there's been a bit more reticence to do that. So we've not been so, you know, putting so much importance on our actual brand name.
So how does that reflect? Excuse me. How does that reflect? I mean, is what you're saying that, you know, perhaps the best people when they leave college don't head towards marketing in countries outside the US because it's seen as a kind of it's only a theory, but it's some kind of second-rate profession, if you like.
I don't think it's a second-rate profession, but what I think you find is that the boardrooms are still dominated by the financial professions, and I think that's a problem. And I think marketing needs to elevate itself, really prove its return on investment, and actually force its way into the boardroom so that it is taken seriously within the UK and within the rest of Europe.
No, is what you're saying essentially is that the brand is more important than the product? What's on the outside of the bottle is more important than what's on the inside?
Well, no, a brand can only be successful if the product is good, but of course, you know, you do have to focus on the brand, you do have to focus upon those intangible values around what you're selling. The product's important, but the brand is one of the most vital assets any company can own.
We've heard for years, haven't we, that where sort of anti-globalisation issues are concerned, companies like McDonald's and Starbucks do sometimes take the rough end of the stick, you know, rough treatment, and they have to board up and stuff. With the sort of current climate of anti-US thinking, perhaps because of the war in Iraq, you know, in some places around the world and in some camps, is that having any kind of measurable effect on the likes of Coca-Cola and Microsoft and so on?
Well, it's actually quite minimal. I mean, the Superbrands organisation recently researched marketing directors, and only 12% felt that American brands would suffer at all within the UK. And although 50% did think there would be some effect on the perception of American brands internationally, actually in sales terms it's very small, because people are quite savvy. They can differentiate between a company, a brand, and the government and the country in which that operates. The other important point is, where do brands originate from? If you take someone like Shell, you know, that they've got listings in various stock exchanges, they operate in countries throughout the world, they have investors, community programs throughout the world. You know, how can you pinpoint where that company and that brand comes from these days? It's very difficult.
Okay, all right, very interesting. Thanks for your time. Stephen Cheliotis is Brand Liaison Director at Superbrands.
Have you ever wondered just how some people roll out of bed and effortlessly look as cool as a cucumber. New research says the elusive art of being cool is a combination of innovation, authenticity, and serious dedication. That ruffled look, that couldn't care less approach is extremely studied. According to the brand council, David Beckham, the footballer, Real Madrid footballer, is the coolest celebrity in town, followed by the up-and-coming pop star Justin Timberlake. London comes out as the coolest city in Europe, beating off stiff competition from Barcelona and Paris. With me to talk about it, Stephen Cheliotis from the Brand Council is here for more. Let's talk about cities first of all. I'm not really surprised whether it's London, Paris, Madrid or Barcelona. I'd have been far more surprised if you had said Hanover or Turin was cool.
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, I think, you know, with cool, despite it being a personal thing, what I see as being cool might not be what you do. There are some obvious choices, and London, I think, in Europe is a clear winner out there.
What is the significance of, for example, London being defined as the coolest city, or Beckham being the coolest person?
Well, whether it's a brand, a personality or a city, what cool means is money, because 50% of people we interviewed said they would pay an extra amount, they would pay a significant premium for something they regard as being cool. So that's very important. People want to come to London because it's seen as cool and diverse. People want to buy Alexander McQueen because it's seen to be cool and leading edge.
Yeah, but hang on. What do you mean when you say something is cool? Well, I said earlier, it's a combination of innovation, authenticity, and serious dedication. What do you mean by cool?
Well, it's very, very difficult to pigeonhole cool, but it basically is something, it's that X factor, if you like, that means people really desire it. People really want that brand, they want that personality, they want to come to that city. That is the essence of it. But innovation, dedication, originality, relevance, they're all very key to being cool.
Nature or nurture? Can you make something cool if it's not inherently cool?
It's a bit of both, to be honest. You look at most of the brands that we looked at, for example, the Alexander McQueens, the Agent Provocateurs, they've got really strong personalities behind them, people that really believe in what that brand stands for. So it's very important that the personality is there, that, you know, it's really original and authentic, but obviously, you have to market it well if it's a city or if it's a personality or if it's a brand.
I mean,
you do have to run it well.
What examples do we have where somebody has set out to be cool, or a product has set out to be cool and has just simply disastrously flopped? I mean, does that ever happen?
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at the least cool celebrity list that we put together. You know, you've got the likes of Jordan, Victoria Beckham, of course, the opposite of David, really. They've really tried to make a career for themselves. They've really tried to get the publicity, but they're just not cool.
Because it's something innate. It's something that you cannot build and create. You've either got it or you haven't.
The key thing is personality, and personality is not something you can create.
Are we highly uncool for talking about people who are cool?
Well, if they were talking about themselves being cool, if it was the Tate or Goldsmith or Ducati saying we are cool, then yes, that's, you know, that's not what you do. But it's a panel of experts we've put together and the public opinion, and we've said these is a snapshot of what is cool, what is not.
We thank you for coming in and updating us on who's cool and who's not.
If Beckham doesn't play, it might not be only the England team that suffers, but also sponsors like Adidas, Pepsi and Coca-Cola. And here to tell us more is Stephen Cheliotis. He's from the independent branding firm Superbrands. And firstly, we must say we wish him the absolute best of luck. He is a talisman for the Brits, of course, at present. Which brands is he associated with, and which brands would be hurt the most if indeed Beckham doesn't play in the month-long World Cup finals?
There are a number of brands that he's associated with. Some are sort of real huge super brands such as Pepsi, Adidas, and there are some lesser-known brands such as the Police sunglasses and Brill Cream. Now all these brands will of course suffer if he doesn't play, but I don't think it will actually be a disaster for them, because they're not only reliant on him as a sportsman, they're actually reliant on him as a personality, so someone that's high profile in the media, and someone that actually reflects their own personalities, their own brand values.
Still, they must have watched last night, those associated with the sponsorship, and felt pretty sick about the whole thing. I mean, it was a terrible tackle to begin with.
It was.
I mean, that made you feel sick to start with. But I mean, you know, there is real serious money involved in this.
Oh, absolutely, definitely. I mean, they will be obviously completely and utterly down today because of what's happened yesterday on the pitch there, and that's actually the reality when you get involved in sort of endorsements, celebrity endorsements, whether it's actually a sports person, a film star, a singer. There's always a danger maybe they go out of form, maybe they hit a crisis, or maybe they just simply get injured. You know, it's an unfortunate tackle, and it could have big ramifications for the business itself.
I suppose Anna Kournikova is the analogy to draw of late. The tennis star who's won practically nothing when it comes to the big time in tennis, but is very good looking and is a personality, at least off the court, if not on.
Exactly. If you find a personality that really reflects the brand, Anna Kournikova, she's lively, she's you know, very good looking, and she draws a lot of attention. So the fact that she hasn't won anything isn't great for Adidas, but it isn't a disaster either, because there's still a lot of people that are attracted to Adidas, there's still a lot of people that go to their website, there's still a lot of people that have become aware of Adidas because of the Kournikova endorsement. And the fact that she hasn't won anything has made Adidas start to reconsider their sponsorship, but so far, over the few years that they've worked with her, it's worked fantastically well. And Gary Lineker, Walker's, he doesn't play anymore, but he's a great personality. We all love him. And as a result, we love Walker's Crisps.
One of the former England captains, of course. OK, I suppose there's the possibility for other heroes to be created from this, if Beckham indeed isn't playing, and those other players perhaps associated with smaller black brands who might not have got the exposure that they may now get.
Exactly. And also the other thing to consider is there's a lot of brands have actually sponsored the England football team. So whilst they're focused on David Beckham, such as Coca-Cola put him on the Coke bottles during the World Cup, they can actually have a contingency planned where they actually look at other players, you know, the Nicky Butts, maybe the goalkeeper, maybe one of the star defenders such as Rio Ferdinand. So they can actually now refocus their efforts on some of the other players that exist within the team.